All right. So the pattern today of stretch, let's think of it as like a real big rib kind of rebound in the beginning. So you're going to have your bolster in the middle and it's a cross. If you have a standard bolster, that's best. If you have a round bolster, it won't be that helpful for the beginning pose. And if you do have two bolsters, get that other one around for your side stage, FYI. You got a couple blankets at the back or towels, and you're going to use a block to sit on. So what I want to start with my sitting is that I'm actually with a block in front of my bolster. I want you to actually, I know it just feels like you're on a tiny little Lego without little spikes on it, but it will facilitate the stretch of this midsection. So I sit on this, I barely can sit on this, but I'm sitting on a flat block. Then you take a belt and make a loop. You can make the loop by putting the belt around your legs and buckling it as well. And so as you take the belt over the legs, around the legs, you're going to tighten it up so that the pressure is helpful. We're going to do some hip flexor kind of concentration today, a new hip circle I've been studying a little bit. So we'll work with the hip flexors a bit. So I want you to, you can't really leave anything out in class. Everything's part of it, I know. But as you lower down onto your back, if your feet are close to the wall, so be it. If you're not really that close, it's just the way the pose unfolds, you know. But I want the clarity is that the belt is at the top of the thighs, okay? So you'll have your sandbag nearby, but I want you to tighten the belt so that when you stretch your thighs down, now stretching thighs down could be, for some of us, bending knees for the first minute or so, just to get the back to accommodate the circulation from the props. Okay, so legs are reaching or bending. Okay, the belt though is at the very top, so it's right next to the rear. In fact, it could feel like it's almost kind of around the base of your rear, just right up to that space. And then add your position of your head on the two blankets today. Use two. And as you add some sand on the legs, get that sandbag across and settle the muscles. Now, even if I bend my knees, let's say my back is happier with me bent, I still think the sand is a helpful way to elongate the midsection because it gives some interpretation of the gravity of the situation. And that for us is just the yoga practice right now. I mean, there may be other psycho patterns in the mind, but see if you can work with the gravity of mapping the way gravity flows through the body. Open the chest. All you get is your arms to do that. And it feels like you want to get more, maybe by creating stretches that are deeper, but let gravity flow through you so that simplicity of the pose can be helpful. And the situation of relaxing your eyes, your feet might be just perfect where they're at. You may have ended up with a pretty flexed pattern with your base layer of their legs. You may feel they kind of pivot out. So if they do pivot out, I would take the feet a little wider. The belt's going to feel some restriction for that intensity. But the idea is we bring awareness to those fibers in the legs. And now let's settle into our breath. So experiment with the in-breath filtering through the nose. And the out-breath resting. And let that cumulative effect of exhaling be each one a rest moment to rest and let go. Feel where the shoulders are releasing. Doesn't have to be some deep pulling sensation to identify with stretching. It can be just setting yourself in a structurally optimal awareness for your circulation. This is an optimal position for our posture, for the hip flexors, for the core, clearly to strengthen the spine. This could be a practice all its own, just resting onto props, strengthening the spine, lengthening the core, breathing to stimulate the respiratory tree. And that's composed of the lungs, the bronchial tubes, and the throat. You know, as we shift and transfer into some movement, you'll slide the sand off, and probably a good idea to move the belt as well. So bend the knees, unbuckle, unless you want to slide it off from around the legs to the feet, you can do that too. You have to do an inversion to do that. But hold on to the belt, and if it's still kind of a buckled together, you can use it when it's a double. It's a little more firm actually when it's in a loop. But regardless, you have your hands holding your belt, and once you notice, okay, maybe you want to go down to one blanket now under your head. You can decide if you're tipping your chin in too much. I'm going to go for the comfort. It feels just fine for me today. But as the knees bend, you're going to move the right knee towards the chest. And we're going to work with these concentrated hip circle patterns in two different parts of the class. So this time we're going to start with just feel the knee bending. Okay, you have this kind of reserved position with your hands holding the belt, so they can't really help you holding your leg. So if you need to change that and put your arms to the floor to give you a little more grounding, you can do that too. But with that right knee bending, I want you to actually circle the knee. So you're making circle patterns with your thigh, your hip, your leg muscles. But make the circle quite small. So it's not as if you're trying to let the leg completely push out to the side to do a deep inner thigh stretch. It's more working on kind of lubricating into the hip, but the focus is controlled hip circling. The left knee may kind of do a little bit of shifting side to side, just as a monitor. But when you come back to center, I'm going outwards and around clockwise, right? So that's the first pattern. Lower the foot down and then left leg lifts up. Just keep it a nice, easy bend, creasing the knee in the hip and circle. We'll get to the rotating in, but as we kind of get familiar with the hip and of course the flexor. So if you do tend to feel a little grip at the top of the leg in this one, I would be sure that the right foot is pushing down. You have a nice stability through that right hip bone. And when you rotate, you can make it smaller. If you're feeling it kind of a little firing at the top of the leg, you could bring the knee in, try to bring it in closer. And I know the actual range of motion is somewhat mysterious, right? To make sure if it's clicking and it doesn't hurt, you're okay with it, but be careful, right? If it's painful, then pass on the pose pattern. The clicking or a little bit of crickety motion sound is okay. Now lower down that left foot and then bring your feet together in cobbler's pose. Knees out, feet together. Take the belt so you're holding it quite wide, and it's as wide as you feel comfortable. Maybe you don't want it that far out holding your belt, but bring it up towards the ceiling and just feel the shoulders as if you're trying to shrug them up towards the ceiling. It's like you're trying to get your arms a little higher, which can happen if your shoulders shrug. And then bring your arms back. Relax the diaphragm, the belly breathing pattern. Feel where there's a minor kind of grip with the belt. And then let go of the belt. Stretch your arms straight open. So they're out from the ribs, the chest walls out. And this might be the time you go, maybe I can go down to one blanket. Might try it, just kind of see, feel. Okay, because we are shifting a little bit coming up here. So if the neck is the chin is tipping up, right, that's going to mean you need more blanket, right? You want to get a feel of the length of the back of the neck. Yeah, avoid trying to push the chin up higher. It's a natural tilt if it is. Now the feet are going to slide down and the feet separate. So you can feel that kind of twitch in the hip here. And now as you reach to the bolster, go down to one blanket for all, and then grab onto the sides of the bolster, scoot the toes in so you're on tippy toes, the ball of the feet, and the heels are up, and you're gonna lift up your hips, slide the bolster down. I know you got a block there, but it probably won't be a negative impact on your practice. It might even be helpful coming up. So I'm gonna swish my knees side to side a little with my feet still down, so I can find as much length from my hip down to my thigh top on the bolster. This is why you want a flat bolster. And then we'll start with the left thigh first this time. Bring the left knee in, the right foot is down. I want you to rotate the knee inward. So go ahead and find that controlled hip circle inwards. It's a little bit of a kind of a lopsy feeling doing this. I do agree. But we are going to be working again on the external rotator in a little bit. So feel your arms are open. Don't hold a belt. If it feels a little bit sloppy of emotion, that's okay. You can have those days. It's not quite sure. And then control the knee moving towards the chest. You're probably not going to touch your chest with it. Control the knee moving in. All right, lower the left foot down. Now right knee up, circulate inwards. All right, it's a different pattern for the joint a little bit. I prefer the outer rotation, but this one I can tell my limitation is different. It's not necessarily less flexible, it just isn't my preferred comfort zone with movement. You can have preferences. And try them both and see, why is this feeling, and probably is a more stabilizing range, right? Because the outer pressure is a little more flexibility, a little more challenging on the SI joint. So here we're getting more stability. Bring the right knee towards your chest, okay? We are set. We're gonna get our belt and we'll take it. If it's already buckled in a loop, you're kind of already set. That's nice to have. I didn't have mine in a loop ready. As I buckle it together into a loop, I want the loop to be massive, okay? So go for a big loop here. All right, now I put it under the right foot. I can change the width of it as I go. And as you have the tail of the belt on one side, if you've got a pretty long belt, this can be where you want the tail on the side that is your dominant hand. Then you can tug on it or you can loosen it. So let the left leg stretch straight down, okay? Get your sand. It's been a while since we've done this. On the top of the left thigh, straight down or across, either way. Usually what works is what stays, because one of them usually falls off. Some people have their bone on the front of that left hip. The hip flexor really can aim straight down. And those of us that maybe have kind of a fiery experience with our hip flexor, I actually like the block under my leg because it stabilizes the whole thing. If I could finagle that, I'll figure that out. Prop pattern. So hold on to that right foot take the loop around the back of your head, center, right? So the center of the back of your head. You don't want it too loose of a loop because you want to make sure it's stable. You don't want it too short, not too long. So I would experiment with the range of circulation in the leg first. That could just be your focus. Just how does my leg range feel? And the left leg could be a little bit out if you're feeling the foot turn out a lot. Shift the foot a little to the left, and it still might have a kind of a swoop into the foot. That the sand should be helpful to stabilize. Okay, so I find I kind of nudge my elbows on the bolster. I kind of use the bolster, and I'm finding the block is quite satisfying to have. So I'm lengthening through that front left thigh. Yeah, real important here. In fact, if you like getting your hip flexor stretch this way and it's somewhat meaningful for you, what you could do in a practice is to have a little more height under your back. So you could add a blanket on your bolster, and that will stretch that thigh a little more. So that could be a home practice note. I'm making that note for myself. That would be good for me to work on. Okay, so arms are open, relaxing the weight of your head, and the stretch is intensifying in the leg. So if you want to make it so it's not quite so intense, you could make the loop wider so your head lowers down and it's close to the blanket. And it wouldn't be incorrect if you have your head down so it's actually touching the blanket, right? So that way I still get traction in my neck, but that's requiring my hamstring to be full, a complete hamstring stretch. I can't really do more than that, but you decide how does your neck respond. And I like this version sometimes because I know the belt is giving me traction in my neck, but I'm not really straining it to keep it up. So if you like to have the lift, and that's a little different type of tractioning, go there. And if you want to be back, there you are. Relax your eyes. Center a few more cycles of breath. And try to keep the front of that right thigh as if you're kind of shifting your right hip to that towards the ground. So you don't want to get this kind of hike the top of the right thigh. You want to focus on the hamstring. So sometimes putting your hand on the front of that right thigh, the very top where it connects into the hip, you could just touch that and make sure that is levelizing the hip. It really secures the pose in the hamstring so we don't tighten our hip flexor more. But this hip flexor will get a little different experience because it will already have been up, more grippy position before you put sand on it. Okay, hands on the belt behind your head. Help yourself to shift your sand off the leg, and then shift your left knee in and up and lift the left foot into the belt and change a roux. Yeah, so right foot comes down, stretch through the back current of the left thigh. One side can feel different. You could go, oh, wow, this hamstring is just a little bit tighter. Maybe it's your calf. It could be a different part of your experience than you are really measuring in your mindset. You might think it's just one part of the leg, but it could be a lot of reasons. It could be some old injury in your foot, and then, it's starting to cause some challenges in your calf, and it could be more than a hamstring. So change the belt length if it is too intense for you and you're not able to be comfortable with that. And notice it. Maybe you go, oh, my left leg is not quite the same. And so I have my belt behind my head on the occiput. It's in the middle, it's above my ears. My head can lean back. I can change how I'm working with my chin. Some of us might find kind of let the head do a little bit of lift, like you're keeping your face open. You just have to find how does that belt stay and just give you traction. Kind of got to figure out your headset. Okay, left thigh, you could touch the top of the leg and remind it to stay away. Doesn't need to go to your chest. And the right leg is relaxing. You can have a mentality that you're letting both of them kind of relax. So as you let the mind focus on the breath, you can just feel the pattern of movement with breath and a still point with the body, but there's still, you're mapping the way gravity flows through the whole time. Noticing maybe your foot turns out and it just wants to be there. You can try to move your foot a little farther to the right and just see if that changes the response in the front of the thigh. Now the left calf is stretching from the foot into the calf, up just below the knee, the back of the knee. Now enjoy the transition here as you slide the sand away. Let's move the hands to the back, slide the belt off the back of your head down the blanket, hold the belt with your right hand and work that left hip flexor. So you're trying to work on opening up and extending from the back muscles across the fibers of the side of the leg, but you want to feel like there's something in the connection of the back of the pelvis into the waist, which to me is connected to my back if it feels comfortable. So take a simple left leg crossover to the right. And as the right hand holds the belt, like your head turn to the left. So feel a full rotation in the head, the weight, and the movement of the neck. Okay, head turns back center. Use that pull on the belt. You might do this even with your eyes closed. I know it's tempting to look to see what's up, but it's not a big change. You bring the left foot straight up, but feel the circulation and the concentration of that in the pull with your hand. Now reach the left hand and the right hand to hold the belt and get the belt so it's near the ball of the foot so you can pull and get the calf deeply. It's so great to stretch the leg this way because of the circulation around the knee joint. And it's quite useful. If you have inflammation in the knee, I tend to, when that does occur, I do feel my knee more like it's kind of like draining when I get the leg up, right upside down. So I like to do these inversions for some knee circulation. Slide the right foot in, bring that foot up into the belt, and then take the left foot down. If you don't like your block being somewhere random, you can kind of nudge it away if it's uncomfortable. But as you pull, cross over, left hand holds the belt, get a full reach with that hand as the right leg moves the back of the pelvis, the hip joint, good. And feel if you're rolling, right? We're using the bolster so we isolate. So we're not encouraging ourselves to roll over onto the hip. That would be kind of awkward, I think, with the bolster. So it's a really great message with the use of the bolster to isolate and also support the balance of the sacrum and the low back. So you're completely welcome to feel how that foot reaches to the left, how the crossover and the fibers of the hip, the reach of the waist and the breath. And just maybe that right arm opens, turn the head to the right, and breathe. And sometimes the most simple setup is quite deep, as the breath is simple and the focus is pure into the hip. Now bend through the right knee. Okay, we're going to let the belt shift it away and take one final moment here before we go side to side. Just let the legs stretch down. Block might still be there, huh? Okay, so get a feel when the legs don't have a crease into them. There's a trade-off for this open, but the back has a grip. So get a block or a ball, either's great. Okay, step the feet, slide the feet in so the knees point up, and then they get to be a little bit higher when the feet come up. And then placing that ball or block between the knees. And as the arms stretch out, make cactus arms. So instead of straight open with the arm, you're gonna bend the elbows and the knees, so everything's kind of bendy. The knees go side to side, and I want you to work your way up to not quite the hip circle, because you got something stuck between, but you're moving your knees towards the arm. Now you gotta be careful. I'm not warmed up enough in my back to go right into that. I just go across and you get to know yourself. Yeah, some days it's like, how can I get that to loosen up and not feel so snagged up? So take time to get the seam and feel the way, again, how you're mapping the way gravity flows through. So you get to enjoy traction and gravitational flow when you're lifted up on something and trying to drop parts from one side to the other. It's really all pretty simple what we're up to, but we just take all these poses and sample movement. Okay, now the next time you go back into the center, careful, because I want your back to start to get more release. Bring the knees towards the chest, noticing that you just have the block or ball. Now, can you remove that, but still keep a bit of that spacing? Right, so you measure that space with the item you had, the knees in, and then roll your weight, your knees to the left, then let your ribs go left, and you're actually going to come off of the bolster, so you're going left, and then you're going to slide down towards the base of your mat. If you got this block, you got to move it. Slide down. So we're going to get to side sage. We're going to do a mixture of sage poses and seated poses. So take this other blanket and add it. Yeah, I can see a reason for adding even another blanket to this one nowadays, but you can fold up one blanket and it's perfect. It does the exact thing you need. Block is on the other side of the blankets. If you use it or not, you'll find out with your shoulder. And the ball or block is on the inside of the right knee. You use it or not, you figure out with your knee. And then as you add your sand, if it's not quite obvious what we're up to, we have the left knee bending. It's next to the bolster on the ground. So I'm bending the knee and drawing the knee up, the leg, actually, the thigh to the bolster. Now, when I lie into the bolster, I let basically the way gravity flows through my ribs to just take me into the shape. So I would have to admit that sand on there too soon is quite stimulating to the stretch, too much. Okay, now when I lean down in my side, I'm a little bit counter rotation here. So I'm going to stay with that rotation because it feels good into my ribs and my hip flexor. So take a sandbag, if you have that weight, sandbag, bag of rice, 5 to 10 pounds, place it on the side. If you have a regular yoga sandbag, it's probably 10 pounds. So it's a substantial amount of breath work here. So you can keep it here. Sometimes this doesn't stay, so I just pivot it like we did earlier with the brain float. We have this option 2, option 1 or option 2. Or none of the above. Okay. These sandbag handles can be handy. Okay, so reach the right arm overhead. Maybe you find something. Maybe there's a block. If you've become used to, if you like using a chair for this, this is a nice one with a chair under your hand. And let the weight of and notice what the weight of is obvious to you. So for me, the weight of from my ribs down is easy. I don't need to do much with energy there, but the weight of my head and neck is something that can be a little bit troubling on this one because I want to let that release. I know we can spend a whole class doing stuff for all these areas, but then we were holding the neck the whole time. So use the poses that are in this supine or floor-based on your back, on your side, to relax the neck. And just let your eyes close. And just feel how the ribs move with the breath. You may not feel them very much on this pose sometimes. Now feeling where the breath rises internally as far as how far it goes up in the body. Even though you're on your side, you still can feel when you breathe through the nose, if it's like stays static in the ribs, it would be reasonable in this pose. And or if it goes up towards the throat. Okay, so as we lower the right hand down, let's see, we're going to need that block if it's overhead. So I want you to slide that to your side of your mat. And then slide the sand, let it just drop off. And as we were kind of monitoring, just awareness of where the breath flows through, we'll take a position that we're so familiar with all day. So we'll turn to the left and come up on to sit on our bolster with our cross-legged position. So I would just leave your blankies just as they are. They might be useful coming up. They might be something you shift around, but you're going to take your left leg crossing forward. Let's see, we had this pattern in the side stage. So the left knee was dominant towards the bolster. So what you'll do is you'll cross-legged, hopefully not cross-eyed. Take your sand on the left thigh like a hip hugger. And then some blocks go in front. Okay, I'm going to use the ball under my right knee because it feels cozy, but it's really not required. It might be useful for you to use the ball just so you feel a little kind of rebound into the circulation of the bones. But as you center, Okay, let's bring the hands to the lap and just circle, rotate your shoulders. So you're doing shrugging and shifting them back and down. And just feel how the breath maybe moves. Maybe you don't even notice that it's part of the awareness of the shoulders shrugging and rolling. Sometimes it's enough just to shrug them and roll them. And there's like an inhale and that's it. Okay, now if the neck placement, right, we don't need to get a ruler out here, but feel what you think sitting upright, not uptight, right? Sitting upright. I like that awareness, that sit upright, not uptight. But feel if you have the sand, it kind of has a little lopsided experiment here with the bones. So when you have the hands on the legs, you're gonna tilt forward. You've got to find the right position on your bolster. So I tend to kind of shift back. So I'm almost like sitting towards the back of my bolster here. So I have more of my leg flesh on it, which is really optimal. And then reach your hands to your blocks, whether they're kind of high, maybe they're mid-height. You are completely in control of that though. If you go lower, it's more stretch on the hip, but it's less optimal for your posture, right? Your spine's natural curve. Oh, it does give you more of that natural curve. It rolls you forward. That's not the curve you're looking for. Okay, we're going to stay forward. We're not going to get into the weeds on this one. So lean into it and let the balance arrive into your sitting bones. If you crave more sensation, you just lower your blocks down. It's pretty easy, but it doesn't necessarily reflect well on the spine. So if you put the blocks down and you are now rounding your back, big X, not to do this, try to keep the arch. Yeah, like cat, cow, right? You're stretching the waist away from the center. Okay, so feel the relationship of the sitting bones. And then bring your hands back up to your thighs and take the sand to the right thigh. So if you have a ball, you've got to remove it. And the right thigh lowers down. You slide maybe just a little bit on the bolster so that you can let the right knee lower down. And then cross the left foot over the right. Now, if this is prohibited in your knee joint today, what you could do is let the right leg be straight, the left leg cross over, so the bottom leg is straight. You can do that version, right? It's got its benefits for your back. Or you can have the knee bent. This has its benefits for opening the hip, right? Because the hips have stretched out a little bit. So lift up the heart, center like it's lifting above that left thigh. And then reach your left hand around the waist to the back. Hook the right arm to that left leg and keep the lift, that inner lift. Inhale and exhale, twist. The left hand could come down to the blanket. It's kind of funny to feel about the idea of inhale, because exhale is clear, you're letting go, but inhale, you're still trying to fill up. Right, that mysterious oxygenation process. If the belly is trying to grip up and hold up high, up into the base of the chest, I want you to work with letting your abdomen relax. I think we all kind of identify with inhale and gripping. So let the diaphragm strengthened by the abdomen relaxed in the twist. Yeah, so feeling where the spine centers. Maybe you feel a rotation in it. Maybe it's mostly you're lifting up and pivoting a little. Give it steady, the focus. Relax the pressure with the right arm against the left leg. Come back to center. And I want you to take a Baddha Konasana, so that means the soles of the feet are together, knees out, and add your sand on your feet. And no blocks under the knees unless you find that's really essential for me. I'm going to do that. That's fine. But get a feel for the knees having a lift versus pushing them down, right? The habit is push them down. Somehow we got that in our mind. So feel what their natural lift is. Just noticing that. That's important. Okay, you've got to have some stability in your circulation here. And then notice if, as you work on the sense of sitting bones, holding the knees, if you can work to lifting up the ribs. And then center the left foot, bring it closer into the groins, actually not into the groins, into the bolster, huh? Because there's no groins there, they're up onto the bolster. Right foot in front of the left shin, sand on right thigh. Okay, so you still have the opportunity to feel centered sitting bones. Lean forward. Maybe your hands stay on the legs. Maybe they go to some blocks. But feel that there's more upward lift versus rounded. And simply set forward. Now, if you need a ball under the left knee, this is a good option. It's not required. And I just use it for comfort. It's a comfort prop. That's what the ball is. Definitely squishy and it's responsive to whatever I want to do. I can push into it or it can support me. So feel that you lean forwards. And a little bit of movement is like a massage into the joint. So even if it's like this little subtle side to side, you might feel that situation in the thigh changes. Yeah, gently creating that kind of jostling the circulation into the hip by centering forward. Okay, bring the hands back to the legs, take the ball away, stand on the left thigh, cross the right leg over the left, or if you need that option, the left leg goes straight front, down the mat, and then the right leg over. This works the same response of the arm. So when I center through the spine, I try to work on my ribs lifting. That spine and rib balance is crucial here. And then as I use my breath, my hands on my back, inhale, exhale, turn to the right, bring the left arm to that right leg, right hand back. So this one works better for me to have my blanket as a support for certain. Yeah, I have a preference for the knee bending. If my knee is just fine and comfortable with it, I'll go there. But you might feel like you like the leg straight. And if you have a wall right there, you know it would be really great for your support is to put your foot at the wall at the base and take the twist there. So you have something to push into. Another time, maybe I'll remember that. Okay, as you turn, there's got to be a memory cloud out there I can toss it into. As you turn to the right, feel how that left arm has pressure and the correspondence into the ribs. That rotation. Collarbone spread, rotating the collar. Now relax the grip with that left elbow, slide it away to help you come back forward, and then slide the sand to the right of your mat, and then uncross, and I want you to stretch the left leg straight down, slide down off the bolster, turn to the right, get your block back and your ball, if you have it, and add that on the inside of the left leg, and then take side sage on the right side. So you have to be a little aware of this waist stretch, arm between, sand on left, and as you guide yourself down to your blanket. Again, you're focusing on that reach with that left arm. Now, some of us, the reach is going to be relaxed. So we'll be with the hand on the side or next to the side on the bolster. Some of us might like to open up the ribs because there's not like a bunch of sand. You can find a way. And if this is a little too pointed in your shoulder, then it might be too much, right? If you reach and you just feel one space grip up and narrow to one point of pressure, you're not getting the idea of the range of motion, which is like an interesting line, isn't it? Range of motion. It's like you're trying to find the edge of the range, and that's called the range of motion. So you're using motion to reach into it. So that could mean you move a little bit in and out until you find the arm position for you. And we want a good 2 to 3 minutes on this. So find your centering, experiment with the inhale, length. Try to get up to 4 counts. Exhaling for 5 to 6. Now, if you get a feel of the weight of the hip itself on the ground next to your bolster, and some of us might find the knee position is it's okay in the beginning, and then it starts to kind of drag in some of the muscle pathways into the joint. So if you need to shift out of the knee this far back, you can always bring the knees stacked. No problem. Always an option on this one, anytime, even the whole time. Okay, so when we start to come out, we're going to move that left leg towards the right leg. Sand goes away, and we're going to meet our feet to the wall. So I want you to roll to that left side. Or sorry, right side. Oops, right side. Okay, come up, and we're going to find our way to our wall spot. So that means feet are towards the wall. But what you'll do is you'll take your blanket. Probably one is plenty here. I don't think you're going to need more than one blanket. Have a blanket in a quarter fold. So it's the fringes, if you have them on a blanket, they got to go to the back because they just kind of are bothersome sometimes. But maybe that's just me. All right, so you got your blanket under your knees. You got your bolster. You're going to keep it spine-wise, so straight away from the blanket to the center of your space. And then why not get your blocks somewhere nearby so you can use them for our low lunges. And then add the hands. So you're going to add hands to it. Okay, so feet touch the wall. That's important. Now, maybe it's not your whole foot. It's the ball of the foot. Depends on your wall base, doesn't it? We're all a little different with that probably. So feel where the hands spread out the fingers. Notice the weight into them. Like, what feels okay for you? Do you have to turn your hand out a little bit? Be honest with your wrist here. Fingers spread out. Sometimes it's too much for your left, for the inside of the wrist, right? So you have to find what position is good. So round your back into cat. Really work the spine. Inhale, arch. Okay, now when you observe the cat-cow, I spent many hours just staring at cat-cow movements. You'll find it looks like less is happening, I think, than is. So if you observe, like, I don't think she's doing much with her back, you want to really feel that internalized sense of arching, reaching through the ribs, rounding, motion area of the back, chin to chest. So let it really feel like there's movement kind of lining your middle body to your chest, through your spine to your neck. I mean, it's stood the test of time, this sequence, right? It works for people to loosen up. And then I want you to push back a moment, not child's pose, but just push back so the spine has its full reach. Bring your hands as far forward as they could go. Keep it reaching. And then come forward so you lie face down, right? You're straight down, you're prone onto your bolster, and your elbows are by the sides, like you're ready to pounce. Pounce practice. But your legs are in a position you could do it, right? Because they're straight back. Now, if you feel like it's cramping your style, your knees are too bent here to feel a stretch, you just kind of stretch away. You can move your bolster a little forward. I want you to feel like your legs can kind of push into your feet, into the wall. Now, my feet are not up high. This is not a good idea, but they're low. Okay. Now, reach the elbows down to Sphinx so the forearms are down on the ground. And the two forearms. You're going to push back into the balls of the feet so that you're getting some nice strength into your lower back. A little bit of tummy time. Best tummy time. Breathe into the bolster. Well, you don't have to breathe right into the bolster, but feel your ribs push into it. So you're way forward with the sternum, right? The upper zone of the ribs is going front. Okay, now lower down the knees. That's a really good one to work with. And then as you let your hips maybe wag your tail a little bit side to side to ease the bones in the mid-body. Hands slide back. Oh, I find that once I slide them back, my glutes kind of grip. Okay, so go back to Sphinx. Okay, and then see if you can let the weight of your hips drop into the bolster. See, I'm having to deal with my issues, but everyone's got their things that go on with this. Try to let this part of your body just rest into the props. Isolate. Now, hands slide back, isolate. Use your arms, isolate arms. Squeeze them in, lift the chest. Okay, now when I push my feet into the wall, it's going to strengthen all the way through my legs into my glutes, but not just my glutes. So I want you to use that push into the wall to get that lift. Okay, now come back to table. Scoot your bolster over, get a couple blocks. We just go right to what we need to do. We're not going to wander much. And take the knees so they're hips distance now. Try your lunge from hips distance, knees. So step the right foot forward. Actually, wait, let's go left foot forward. I want to do something a little different with this. So left foot forward. Sorry. Okay. Making everything have some meaning here. So when I reach the thigh down, the right thigh down, I'm going to take my blocks high enough so I can get them forward, and then lift the back knee up. So my back heel, there is a position where I kind of get the foot smacked up to the wall. But I want you to reach the heel so it lifts up, but not the whole bottom of the foot is pushed into the wall. Does that make sense? So your foot's a little forward of the wall, but your heel is just up. Okay, so there's a little difference with that. What might help you with that is to scoot the blocks back so that you can just feel that tiny lift of the heel. If you can put your heel on the ground, go for it. Mine doesn't quite work with the calf that way, so you love the wall. Now manage the step of the left foot. Take a really good step forward so you can stretch to the front of that right thigh. Whew, this is a stretch into the leg, isn't it? Turn the left foot in, turn to the right, take a wide, extended downward dog. Not extended timing, I don't mean that, but extended. So my side of my right foot is at the wall, the bottom of the foot is down. Lengthen your arms on your blocks. Extend so your head is between. And it's dropped. It's not holding up anymore. So feel that reach, that wide stance. Downward dog. Hands onto the blocks is important, I think, for this one. You can have them lower, right? This might be helpful for some of us. You could have them closer into you if it hurts the shoulders. Pull the thigh bones up like you're sucking up the quadriceps. This is a different way of doing the stance. It's a wide stance. So this angle is wider, and you can monitor the strength into the legs. So try to keep the above the knee. It's like you're contracting. You're trying to stimulate the circulation in the inner thigh, the front, all the way wrapping into the leg. And now bring the hands back. Now, if you need your blocks, bring them back with you under your hands. If you find you can put your hands on the ground, move your blanket if it's in the way. Hands are in line with the toes. That's pretty far back, isn't it? So if I use my blocks, I just bring them in onto this inside line under my hands, and then bring the crown of your head towards the blanket. Now this, I think, is a great inversion, but not everybody's gonna feel like it's their inversion of choice. So you can scoot your left foot closer to the wall. If it's just too much span of leg, that feels a little better to me. A little closer in, crown of the head down. It may not even touch the blanket very well, so you could take the blanket, make it a little higher, right? So the crown of your head could go down. Some of you are going to have your hands on the floor and crown releasing. Breathe. Relax the face. Okay. Most of us probably lost that quad grip, I bet. So recenter your focus on the legs. Try to pull up the quads. Okay, now come back forward with your hands and let's take it to the left. So we're turning back to where we were with our left foot forward in the lunge. See if you can take your blocks up very high. This is about as high as they're going to go. And see if you can, that back heel can stretch down. So you're in a full calf stretch at this point. My left knee's in a little bend because it seems natural. Okay, so I'm going to look back to my legs and up to my top thigh and just notice that my hips are squared up a little bit. And then step the right foot forward. You can take a forward fold. We were just in one for an extended time, so it might be better for you, for your back muscles, to have a light arch, taking the blocks in front of your feet, feeling that impact into the shoulders, pushing, right? Many of us have done so many forward bends, they're not necessarily going to be useful at some point in our aging, right? It's better to have some modified forward bends, get some stability. It's nice to have the circulation from them, but we'll find different ways to do that without so much backgrounding. So left foot steps back and the heel can be a little bit up at the wall. This one worked out well because now we have our leg already up. Don't even have to worry about getting it up. You're already up with your back knee. So my blocks are far out to the side for me. This works out well for my hip. So notice your points of contact, your balance. And then this side, we're going to stretch the left heel towards the floor sooner. We're not going to take a wide stance again. So scoot the blocks back if that's helping your ability to balance. And feel the left heel reach. It might be a little up at the wall. It's nice to have the wall just to hold your heel, or maybe it's against your side of your heel. Back foot should be as parallel as it can be. If it's a little turned out, kind of humbly shift it. It's okay, that happens. Okay, and the right knee could be straight, the leg could be straight. I don't know if there's this thing as a straight knee, but you can bend it, you can straighten it. Feel how it flows through the calf, how you move it. And then bend and lower the left knee to the blanket. Take a moment here. If this is too much stimulation in the knee itself, you can have the knee up. Feel a little bit of stretch to the quad. ribs up, center rib channel, right? That middle rib barrel, you want to try to keep it lifting. Talk about that rib barrel here. Now lower back your right knee, shift back, and then we'll take a seat. So I want you to move carefully so that when you turn to sit down, you got a blanket and you're gonna slide it back. And we'll take our bolster to the wall. And I want us to do this reclining pigeon so that our foot is at the wall today. This is specific. You got your bolster down and your blocks. And if you've got a ball, it might be important, but we'll see. So lower onto your back. We didn't do any real up dog, down dog patterns. So this will be kind of curious what we can formulate. So that lift and lower of the hips is, I think, helpful. But what we'll start with here is on your back, you're trying to root your spine. Okay, so it's not like we only sit, we try to think about sitting bones. Pelvis is the base end, spine is up. And now we root the whole spine, so you can kind of shift your shoulders and get spinal. Okay, now left foot crosses to right knee, okay? So that knee is open and the foot is at the wall, so it keeps that bend. Now I get in this habit where my hip swings to the right, even when I'm on my back. I can't even use the floor to monitor that. So my work is on pushing my right foot into the wall and trying to just flatten it out. Don't let my hip get all shifty, swingy to the side. Just flatten it out. You might not get a lot of hip stretch. Some of you are pretty flexible in the joint, and this might be too simple. But simple is good, just to get your alignment, root the spine. Okay, and now as you bring that left foot down to the bolster, right foot down, bring your arms overhead, push your feet down, lift your hips up into bridge, drawbridge. Okay, and notice how you kind of grip around the buttock, it kind of pulls it on each side, kind of moves out to the sides when you are lifting. Now, when you lower the spine down, relax the glutes and just work your way into alternating the next few times. We'll do 4 total in between sides. So as you alternate the lift and lower, do a little self-study of how you're gripping, just how you're gripping. I don't know, you might be gripping your spine area, you might be gripping your glutes, but when you do lift, like we did in cat-cow, this is the opposite, right? You're on your back, you're moving your spine and your hips. It's the same thing, but now you have something behind you when you do the movements, the floor. Okay, now I think that's 4 total. Left foot to the wall, right foot crosses over to the left knee, right knee is open. Okay, if you kind of lean to your left hip, use this to root the back of the pelvis. Even connect here, sternum, xiphoid, all these areas of that are kind of like a platform. You want to keep the center from the back of the ribs flowing. So feel the breath in the middle. Not just the belly, and that's hard. It's like I try to push down to my belly to feel breath. And then as you get a feel of that right knee open, you can get more stretched by getting closer to the wall. All you have to do is get a little bit closer and you probably feel a little bit more, but this is kind of about the fundamental pattern of the spine centering. This is all about that, I suppose. Okay, now try the right foot at the wall. Okay, so I'm going to walk my feet a little bit up the wall. I don't want to go too far because then I can't get my hips to go anywhere. So I push into the wall, lift the hips up. Okay, this is a bit challenging. So slide the ball in between a block and a wall, under the back of the pelvis, and kind of keep those feet up at the wall. They might slide. So you've got to use your network of muscles here to contract a little bit. Okay. So now when your feet are at the wall, there's a little more lift of the glutes, the reverse action, right? And then you can let the spine have its nice little tilt, its arch, and it's just held in the arch. Okay, lower your feet to the bolster, keep the block. Now the blocks for most of us are at the second setting, I imagine, maybe some at the first. So I'm going to give these two options. These are they're pretty different options too. So one is to take your bridge pose in the next few moments so that you have your bolster. I scoot my blanket back in myself, and I lift my hips and I take my block so they're both on the second setting and they're side to side and they're not higher than my ribs. And I push into my feet at the wall so my legs lengthen. We did something like this in the beginning. It was similar. Those of you that go, okay, I'll do that. That's the choice. Second choice, the bolster is not at the wall. All right, and you get closer and closer to the wall as you're using the wall for this. You might not use your blanket on this one. Walk the feet up, lift the hips up. You're a lot higher, and you put the block under the back of the pelvis and put the feet down. Shoulders under, fold. It's a pretty big bridge pose, isn't this one? It's a pretty piped up bridge. Call this bridge pike. So this I like for my hip flexors a whole lot. They're both kind of nice for the hip flexors. So you choose. I'll demonstrate the first one again in a moment, but get a feeling of the shoulders back. This you can get higher on the back of the shoulders. Doesn't make sense for me to use a blanket because I don't want to make more flexion happen into that upper cervical vertebrae. You know, if this doesn't work and you're feeling like that is not my cup of yo there, then you can use your bolster at the wall. Yeah, I kind of got into a habit of this one for quite a few months. Luckily, there's so many bridges, so many choices. Yeah, so I like this one without the blanket probably so I can get my shoulders down and under. And I work on my shoulders being a support for my neck, which is sort of an interesting concept because most of the day, I don't think I work with my shoulders and my neck very much. I don't think of them relating, helping each other out. Okay, but this you get the floor and your props and front space. So your pose of choice here, your choice on it, and then take a few more moments in the shape. Let the spine center. Here where the spine is gently inverted. And the abdomen moves with the breath. Now, as we slide the feet, if your feet are at the wall, it'll be a little different because you'll push into the feet at the wall with the bent legs and you'll lift up. Actually, sorry, if your feet are down on the ground, you walk them back up the wall, push and lift the hips and slide the block out. If you're at the bolster, you'll push down to your feet, lift the hips, slide the blocks. Take a hip crossover. So if your blanket is gone, from your position, slide it flat under your head so it's still low. Slide back enough so that you can kick the bolster to the right, or if it's already there, it's there. And you'll take a crossover now so the hips roll. So the first one we did today with the knee side to side, there's no hip roll. This one you can let the right leg be anything. It can bend, it can straighten, and it has more of a hook position, and the left leg crosses to the right. I would use a ball if you have one for the sacrum. I think it's really soothing. And as the ball, it could be like gluteal fold or a little higher to the sacrum. It's kind of where it just holds best. And then use your sand maybe. Some of us might not use sand. Some might use it on the thigh, closer to the knee. This is for me a little less disruptive on my knee if it's closer to my knee. If it's closer to my hip, then it kind of drags the ligaments around the knee a little bit too much. So I just do protective pattern for my knee joint. It's your choice. So be bendy in the knees and feel how the ribs get this nice flow. And the next, few final poses here, we want to feel like there's some circulation and it's enjoyable. You can almost bask in just all the circulation that occurs in the hip here. Both sides, one's weight bearing and one's flowing. Just center the breath. Slide the sand away. Position the legs down from the hips so the knees point away as you take the ball out, and position the feet so they're wide. Push down them and root the spine. And you might not feel the whole exact length of it, but the parts that touch down are connected to the hips so much on this last experience that it might feel strange, but you can let the back of the pelvis kind of press into the floor like you're doing just a tiny bit of a pelvic tilt to balance the spine. You can't even see it kind of pelvic tilt, but you're doing some kind of work into the core pelvic floor. So take the bolster to the left, scoot your hips to the right, and then, that idea of kind of flopping over to the side kind of takes away that pelvic floor control. So you want to let your knees move over towards the right, and then you let the left leg relax, the right leg swing over. So you're using your back mechanics, right? Your mechanical movement out of your back to bring the leg over. And then add the ball, add the sand. Maybe you don't add anything and you let the leg cross over the bolster and you're a little more content without things. That's all right. Sometimes these things, these props, can give us a stability so we don't wander so much. We just stay anchored with the prop adjusting the bones into a pose that can promote healing, right? All we're doing restorative practices, using props to put the body in shapes that promote healing. So that's kind of it, kind of the gist of the practice. Promoting circulation into that right hip, sand is on, and that left hand could be anywhere. You can have it across the heart. Yeah, pledge allegiance to the pose. You can let your head roll to the right. And then feeling where the breath is, maybe under your hand. Now, even when we time out the pose, there's usually still circulation that's kind of getting you to a place where you feel like you're a little more mobile in that zone. And that it's like it's still work to be done. Right? That's clear. Some of these shapes, it's not, it doesn't end. And so you might clue into where the circulation is enhanced right now. It's at the top of the thigh into the hip. And then that could be a place you bring calculated focus in the last pose, right? To let that area, really feel that circulation in that area settle. So moving any items off of the body that's holding it. And then you're going to let the body roll to the left. Use your hands to push you back to the wall, and then slide your blanket and your bolster against it. You want to come to sit on the bolster, probably on the side you don't always, like the last time that you were doing legs up the wall. Go to the other side of the bolster. I think that's pretty critical. Unless you have like a shoulder handicap, that's one reason you might not go up on alternate sides. So this does require some shoulder mobility, doesn't it? Kind of a more mobility than it looks like. So we sit with our rear to the wall. So the tendency to teach this when you're like in a squat next to the bolster is prevents a lot of people with knee stuff to do pose that way. So I find just sitting with my rear and I'm on the side of my bolster, so it's like kind of tipping up and then rolling. I can never get compact enough in my shape, so I might end up on the other side of the bolster. So I get myself centered and then add my blanket and my sand to my feet. Manage the balance in the pelvis. All right, this is a surely soothing pose for a lot of inner vibration around the knee and the thigh bones up into the pelvic floor, right? So this is a major player for focusing on the opposite of prolapse. That's one good thing on inversions. So with the back of the muscles, the back muscles centering with a little lift of the hips. Yeah, it's so nice to just let the arms flow out to cactus or let the arms stretch down so they're below the height of the heart. And let's come to this moment of balancing the breath and let that continue to thread in your focus. Inhaling, filling the lungs. Exhaling, letting go. And feel how the lower abdomen, maybe it's hard to get that isolation because it feels like it's one moving belly, but there is like that kind of that compartment. And some of us, maybe if you've ever had surgery and there's going to be some challenges for some people with scar tissue and so forth, but it's important to try to feel the full experience of the belly movement, not just like belly button area, but really feeling low in the abdomen with the movement. So it's close to pelvic floor and there's some security there, right, of tightening. So this is the opposite of it, like our daily grind of walking, sitting has this pelvic floor kind of interesting grip. So we just can't be gripped there because we're upside down. So let your body be in this reverse action for a few more breaths. Relax the throat. At the glandular system here, the endocrine in the throat area, relax that area with swallowing. Hydration is next. Now, if you want to stay here, you are welcome to stay with the legs up all the way to the very end and beyond. And if you would like to come out and join that energy, it's up to you. But shift the feet from the wall. If you're going to stay with it, just stay with it. You don't have to follow anything from here out. You follow your own breath and stay. Those of us moving the sand away, feel the knees bending. And if the balance is to stretch out the back of the pelvis, it also moves into the very peak of the top of the legs. And roll to the side, whatever you're comfortable. Maybe you roll out the other side. And then when you come up, take a moment to sit on your next to the wall, maybe on your bolster, maybe off the bolster, whatever is most comfortable with the span. Now, noticing that the wall makes a difference with the knee position, right? When your back is imprinted closer to something that holds it up or it has an impression of up and behind you, the legs can have a little easier time, right? There's a natural arch in the spine. Okay, so feel the shoulders center back. Head maybe feels like it touches. And as the shoulders keep back, bring the hands up in front of the heart. And a moment of thought of something you have gratitude for. And simply some moment of gratitude for taking the time for practice together. Inhale behind the heart. And exhale, bowing into the space behind your heart. Namaste.